Hey, everybody. Thanks for being with me on this Wednesday night as we gear up for probably what will be one of the biggest trials of the summer here during 2026, the case against Lindsay Clancy, who admits to killing her three small children. The former neonatal nurse says that she wasn't of right mind. She didn't know right from wrong. And that's her defense in all of this. So we're going to gear up towards what will be a several week-long trial. They're projecting anywhere between 3 and 6 weeks long there in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. Here's where it stands with jury selection for this trial. We have Christina Rex reporting from WBZ TV, 17 potential jurors chosen already. That breakdown is 10 women and 7 men. One is still needed, so they're going to go back and complete the jury selection process, the voir dire, tomorrow on Thursday. And then opening statements are expected this coming Friday. And then that's kind of interesting in itself because that leaves the full weekend for the jurors after they've already been seated and hearing from both attorneys if they both choose to give a opening statement, and then maybe 1 or 2 witnesses. Then they're going to have that little break in between before evidence picks back up on Monday. So I kind of wanted to play part of what we might hear during opening statements of this very tragic case playing out there in the Commonwealth. And I wanted to revisit with you a couple of the videos that are posted online. You can go back and watch these yourself, but it's of the initial hearings and her arraignment. And this is after she's in the hospital, she's conscious, and she's hearing the state's case against her, and she has a defense attorney, and you're going to hear from him too. So I'm going to play part of it, and then we can kind of talk about it before I can tell you about what to expect tonight in my episode on Justice with Matt Johnson and the expert that I have lined up for tonight, which I'm hoping that you watch. Okay.
It's fine the way it is. Okay, thank you.
Your Honor, shall I arraign this gentleman?
Yes, you may proceed with the arraignment, Mr. Clerk.
Ms. Clancy, on docket 2359 CR 153, the court has a complaint charging you under 265 section 1, count 1 murder, juvenile 1. Count 2, 265 section 1 murder, juvenile 2. Count 3, 265 15D big A, strangulation or suffocation, juvenile 1. Count 4, 265 15D big A, strangulation, suffocation, juvenile 2. Count 5, 265 15D big A, strangulation or suffocation, juvenile 3. Count 6, 265 15A big A, assault and battery, dangerous weapon, 2-wit exercise rope, juvenile 1. Count 7, assault and battery, 265 15A with a dangerous weapon, 2-wit exercise rope, juvenile 2. And count 8, 265 15A, assault and battery, dangerous weapon, exercise rope, 2-wit, juvenile 3. Ma'am, a plea of not guilty will be entered. Please be advised while this case is pending, any violation of state, federal, or local law may result in bail being revoked and be held without bail.
Commonwealth, I'll hear from you first.
Thank you, Your Honor. The Commonwealth is requesting that the defendant be held without.
And I just wanted to pause it right there because I wanted to let you know that the Commonwealth, the state of Massachusetts, has also revised some of the charges since then. They found them to be redundant, but she is facing those top counts of murder, 1, 2, and 3. So.
Bail based on the facts of the case, the strength of the Commonwealth's case, and the potential penalty. On Friday, January 27th, 2023, using an erasable whiteboard because she was still temporarily intubated, one of the first questions that Lindsay Clancy asked was, "Do I need an attorney?" She knew that she had murdered her children, and she had the clarity, focus, and mental acumen to focus on protecting her own rights and interests. The following is a summary of the events that led to the murders of Cora Clancy, Dawson Clancy, and Callan Clancy. On the morning of Tuesday, January 24th, 2023, the defendant took her 5-year-old daughter, Cora, to the pediatrician's for an appointment. She interacted with a receptionist, nursing staff, and a doctor. There were apparently no issues with the defendant's demeanor or behavior as she completed the appointment and was allowed to leave with Cora without any issues or concerns. When she returned home, she went outside with Cora and her 3-year-old son, Dawson, to play in the snow. They built a snowman. The defendant sent photos to her mother and to the defendant, strike that, to her husband. She texted with them. Nothing in the text was out of the ordinary or any sign of any distress or trouble. Back inside later that day at 4:02 p.m., the defendant searched on her phone, Kids Miralax. She then searched at Takeout 3V via her cell phone at 4:13 p.m. Immediately after doing that, she used Apple Maps on her phone to determine how long it would take someone to drive from her home in Duxbury to 3V restaurant in Plymouth. So she would know how long someone would be gone if they ran that errand. She next went on the CVS website at 4:47 p.m. and then called CVS on Summer Street in Kingston. She spoke to the manager of CVS and asked if they had the Kids Miralax. The manager told her no, but they had other similar medications. According to the manager of CVS, her voice did not sound slurred or impaired in any way. She had no trouble understanding the defendant, and it was a perfectly normal conversation. At 4:53 p.m., the defendant texted her husband, who was working in his home office in their basement. She texted, "Any chance you want to do takeout from 3V? I didn't cook anything. It's been a long day." This was an unusual request, as when the family ordered takeout, they'd usually go somewhere closer to home, but it was a place that they had been in the past. Patrick Clancy texted back yes, and then the defendant asked him to check the menu. At 5:06 p.m., the husband texted the defendant asking what she was going to get. She responded, "A Mediterranean power bowl." She spelled it correctly, and it was something that was on the menu. He then told her that he wanted the scallop and pork belly risotto. At 5:10 p.m., the defendant called 3V Restaurant to place the order. She got the order correct. She gave the correct name for pickup, Patrick. The hostess who took the call said there was nothing out of the ordinary about this call. She was able to understand the defendant, that her voice was not slurred or impaired in any way. At 5:15 p.m., Patrick Clancy headed out the door to run these errands at the defendant's request. As he left, she texted him Pedialyte liquid stool softener. Surveillance footage shows Mr. Clancy at CVS on Summer Street in Kingston at 5:32 p.m. He goes to the medication aisle, the children's medication aisle. Phone records show that he called the defendant at 5:33 p.m. and she did not answer the phone. She then calls him back at 5:34 p.m. and the call lasted 14 seconds. He's there at the store unsure of which medication to get, and she tells him exactly what she wants. He had no issues communicating with her. It was a completely normal call, although he did mention that she seemed like she was in the middle of something. He is on surveillance footage during this time, exiting that aisle and appeared to be using his phone. He then heads to the register, makes his purchase, and leaves the store at 5:37 p.m. He's next seen on footage at 3V Restaurant at 5:54 p.m. He picks up the food and he's out of there within a minute. When he arrives home, the first thing he noticed was the silence. He did not see or hear the defendant or the children. He actually called her cell phone at 6:09 p.m. looking for them, and she did not answer. He went to their bedroom on the second floor and the door was locked. He was able to open it, and when he looked inside, he saw blood on the floor in front of a full-length mirror and the window open. He immediately runs downstairs and into the backyard, where he finds the defendant laying on the ground. She appeared to have cuts on her wrists and neck, but he stated to 911 that those wounds were no longer bleeding. She was conscious. He called 911. During this time, he asked the defendant, "What did you do?" She responded to him, "I tried to kill myself and jumped out the window." During the 911 call, Patrick can be heard asking the defendant, "Where are the kids?" He later told police that she replied, "In the basement." So immediately after this happened, she knew what she had done and she knew where the kids were. When EMS arrived, he asked them to stay with her so he could go find his kids. The 911 call kept going. Patrick can be heard on the 911 call entering the home and heading to the basement. At one point, he calls out, "Guys." He can then be heard screaming in agony and shock as he found his children. His screams seem to get louder and more agonized as the time passes. Cora and Callan were on the floor in the den area of the finished basement, which is to the left when you walk down the stairs, while Dawson was alone on the floor in his father's home office, which is to the right when you go down the stairs. Each child still had the exercise band that was used to strangle them tied around their necks when their father found them. Dawson and Callan were face down on the floor. Cora was on her side with her torso turned towards the floor. He removed the bands and begged them to breathe. He continued to scream uncontrollably and screamed for officers to come to the basement. The dispatchers are hearing this and they send help down to the basement. And when they encounter Patrick, he yells out, "She killed the kids." The police rushed the children to ambulances that brought them to the hospital. And unfortunately, Cora and Dawson were declared dead at the hospital. Callan was med-flighted to Boston Children's Hospital. Medical staff was able to restart his pulse, but not his brain activity. He was placed on life support for several days before passing away. The defendant was transported to South Shore Hospital and then to a Boston area hospital where she remains. She sustained several broken bones in her back and her rib cage. The police were able to find several notebooks in the defendant's home pursuant to a search warrant, and also notes on her phone that were similar to journal entries. In the months, weeks, and days preceding January 24th, 2023, the defendant meticulously detailed her daily activities, her children's lives, her mental state, and her medication use. Her writing was clear, precise, and articulate. She never indicated that she was hallucinating, delusional, or had disordered thoughts or speech. In all of her writing, she appears to know who she is, where she is, the date, and with whom she's interacted. She wrote a note on her phone the day before killing the children, stating that she had, quote, "a touch of postpartum anxiety," end quote, around returning to work. She wrote that her psychiatrist had prescribed medication to help her. The defendant was initially diagnosed, according to her husband, with generalized anxiety disorder. She was then evaluated at the Women and Infant Center for Women's Behavioral Health in Providence, Rhode Island on December 20th, 2022. There, after an evaluation, she was told in the presence of her husband by psychiatrists that she did not have postpartum depression and that she had no symptoms of postpartum depression. She wrote in her journal that at times she had suicidal ideation in December of 2022, and she also told her husband that she had suicidal thoughts and on one occasion had thoughts of harming her children. But she did not write or voice those thoughts after a stay at McLean Hospital. When she had those thoughts, she consulted with a psychiatrist and with her husband, and then she committed herself to McLean Hospital on January 1st, 2023. She was discharged by the hospital on January 5th, 2023, and the hospital did not file any paperwork at that time attempting to have her committed as a danger to herself or others. She also kept meticulous and detailed daily medication logs in a diary that she wrote. She detailed that she had difficulties with each of the medications that were prescribed to her. And when she had issues with those medications, she detailed how her doctor had her stop that medication or wean off of it and then try something else. They were trying different medications to see what would work for her, what would benefit her. According to her husband, she was never on more than 4 to 5 medications at one time. And at the time of the murder, she was taking only 3 medications. And he said to the police that she always took the medications as prescribed. After her stay at McLean, the defendant appeared to be getting better, according to her husband. She slept well, interacted with friends and family. She went out with her kids and husband to places like the Kingsbury Club in Duxbury, the Charlie Horse Restaurant, the Museum of Science in Boston, the Cape Codder down the Cape, interacting with her family and the public without any apparent difficulties. She even stayed alone with the children on several occasions without any issues in January of 2023. Her husband asked her in mid-January, "Are you still having suicidal thoughts?" And she said no. The defendant's parents visited the family the weekend of January 21st, 2023. They interacted with the defendant in person. The defendant was able to run errands while her mom watched the children. She texted back and forth with her mother, and there was nothing out of the ordinary about these text messages. In fact, the defendant texted her mother on January 22nd, 2023 to ask how her ride home went. During this conversation, the defendant's mother wrote, quote, "Enjoyed seeing everyone this weekend. Nice to see you doing better," end quote. On the night of the killings, Patrick Clancy was interviewed by the police at Beth Israel Deaconess Plymouth Hospital. He told the police that the defendant was having one of her best days. She was smiling and happy, and there was no indication that she was going to harm the kids. No one at all described her as acting like a zombie in the days leading up to the murder or on the day of the murders themselves. On February 5th, 2023, this past Sunday at 1:35 p.m., while sitting with Dr. Paul Zeisel, the psychologist hired by defense counsel to evaluate her mental state, the defendant used Dr. Zeisel's cell phone to call her husband. She left a voicemail stating that she loved him. Yesterday, on February 6, 2023, at 10:09 a.m., she again used Dr. Zeisel's cell phone to call her husband. This time he answered, and during this call, the defendant stated that after he left the house that night, she killed the kids because she heard a voice and had, quote, a moment of psychosis, end quote. He asked her what voices she heard, and she said she heard a man's voice telling her to kill the kids and kill herself because it was her last chance. Patrick Clancy told the police the defendant had never heard voices before. He also told the police the defendant had never used the word psychosis to him before. The first time she used that word psychosis was when she was with the doctor hired by defense counsel and using his cell phone. The defendant actually wrote.
All right, I'm going to hit the pause button right there as we talk about this case. In case you're just joining me, thank you. Wednesday night, and we're kind of getting caught up on some of the main important parts of this major trial that we're about to see kick off this week. We expect it to. The case against Lindsay Clancy, the mother of three who is accused of killing her three children and then jumping out of a second-story window to try and kill herself. Now, this case is really interesting, and it's made headlines over the past couple of years because the prosecution, as you were just hearing there, their case is this. The killings were planned. That's what they claim. They say that Lindsay deliberately sent her husband out of the house to create an opportunity so that she could murder the children. She understood exactly what she was doing, and mental illness, even severe depression, is not automatically the same as legal insanity. That's according to the prosecutors on this case. The central question for jurors, however, is not whether she committed the acts, but whether she was criminally responsible when she did. Now, as for the defense is saying, unlike many murder trials, they're not really disputing that Lindsay Clancy killed the children. Instead, they argue that she suffered from postpartum psychosis. She had been prescribed numerous psychiatric medications in the weeks leading up to the killings, and her judgment and grasp of reality had become profoundly impaired. Because of that illness, she could not appreciate the wrongfulness of her actions. And then there's more with the husband, which we'll talk about coming up. But let me get this video going again, and we'll hear from the defense. And this will be kind of a window into what we can expect with opening statements, which are now expected this Friday in the case, because jury selection, here's where we're at. They're hoping to seat 18 jurors and the alternates. And right now we're at 17. That includes 10 women and 7 men, according to reporting from WBZ TV, Christina Rex. So they still need one more. And they're planning on continuing the voir dire process tomorrow morning. So they're going to seat that last juror. They're probably going to take up the last pretrial motions and make some rulings. And then we're off and running, with Friday being opening statements. So let's do this. Let's play a little bit from the defense, and we'll talk about the case a little bit more.
Your Honor, my request is that the court not enter what I would suggest is an inhumane order, ordering this woman to be incarcerated. We all know, as people that work in the system, that jails and prisons are woefully deficient in medical care of the most basic type. We all know that this is an individual. Take the pills, you'll be okay. Well, they put her on anxiety. She did have to have stitches and she was sore, and that was a battle. She's extremely emotional. However, she's unable and has been unable to express any happiness or sadness or cry. And in fact, sometime about a month or two ago, she made the comment, "I just wish that I could feel something." Now, our society fails miserably in treating women with postpartum depression or even postpartum psychosis. It's medicate, medicate, medicate. Throw the pills at you and then see how it works. If it doesn't work, increase the dose or decrease the dose. Then end up trying another combination of medications. We're talking a relatively short period of time from when that baby was born in October up until January, when this incident occurred, Your Honor, that she was on such significant dosage of medication. Your Honor knows that Cora was born in 2017. It was a very uneventful, normal pregnancy and delivery. No issues afterwards as far as anxiety. Dawson was born in 2018. Again, it was a normal birth. She had no significant issues as far as anxiety. She did have to have stitches and she was sore, and that was about it. Then, of course, Callan was born. When Callan was born, she ended up becoming depressed, suffered from significant anxiety, as a result of which she consulted with a number of doctors. A number of doctors indicated that she would be able to sleep, she would be able to feel, she would be able to emote once these medications kicked in. And again, as I say, our medical in our society completely abandons women with this condition. It's easy to say, come on, you have a healthy baby. You have a wonderful husband. You're able to take care of your kids in your home. You're lucky. Take the pills, you'll be okay. Well, they put her on a number of medications. They put her on Prozac, which Your Honor is well aware, is what's known as SSRI, selective serotonin reuptake inhibitor. Your Honor knows that along with some of these medications, they have the black box warning from the FDA, may cause suicidal ideation, may cause homicidal ideation. She was on Ativan. She was on Benadryl. And then she ended up being told, okay, because she was complaining about the effects of the Prozac, they said, stop the Prozac, we'll find something else. They put her on Remeron. Then they added on Seroquel. And Your Honor, I attached from David Benjamin, the toxicologist, some papers with the submission. And Your Honor can see the side effects that this Seroquel causes. She was having bad thoughts. She was having worsening depression. Her husband suffered through that phase. Her parents were well aware of the fact that she was suffering from this depression and depressive phase. She wasn't sleeping. She ended up, at some point, Your Honor, December 31st, she was on Seroquel. They told her then the Valium would be stopped. She was a shell of herself, no personality, and went to the doctor again. The doctor again prescribes the Seroquel, and then they took her off the Seroquel. And then she went to the doctor, and at that point, they prescribed trazodone, Ativan, amitriptyline, right up to the very end, when she was so bad that she voluntarily turned herself in, if you will, to the McLean Hospital. We know that that's a psychiatric hospital. She was at the McLean Hospital for a period of about 5 days. While at the McLean Hospital, they basically tried to get her off the Seroquel. She wanted to get off the benzodiazepines. She felt that she was being addicted to the benzodiazepines. She then ends up on trazodone, Ativan. Her mood was terrible after she got out of McLean Hospital. She still had the suicidal thoughts. As the government has indicated, she even told her husband that she had suicidal thoughts. You think this is something that she's planning to kill these 3 kids by going and getting a menu, going on to Google Maps or whatever it is, and finding out the distance? When she tells her husband she's having suicidal thoughts, probably a month prior, thoughts of hurting the children, they go to the doctor again, and she's on the medications, on and off, on and off. This is a significant issue between the postpartum depression as well as possibility of postpartum psychosis that is pretty much ignored. But nevertheless, with the overlay of the SSRIs and the history, and Your Honor has some emails and things that people would reach out to me from all over the world, indicating that their daughter had the same problem, that they had the same problem. Your Honor is well aware that many times when people are on Prozac or on SSRIs, workplace violence, homicides, family homicides. This is clearly a tragic, which is a word that's used too much in the criminal justice system, but this really is a tragedy, this case. So we have, obviously, I would suggest, a very good defense for this young woman. She's 32 years of age, Your Honor. She met her husband. He was the love of her life. They got married. Wonderful young couple. And as counsel noted, she always wanted to have kids, always wanted to have babies. She's a nurse. She went to be a midwife because she wanted to help other women that would be in having babies, but didn't want to have all the medications. She was not a big medication person. Your Honor saw, I think there's probably close to 50 letters that have been submitted to you, and I know you read every one of them. The incredible outpouring of support by other nurses that work at Mass General Hospital. The fact that these women have a vigil, that they write the letters to this court imploring you to understand that you sentence, as far as bail issue, the woman before you, who was a beautiful person, who was thoroughly destroyed by these medications. That's for another day, obviously. A bail issue, bail argument. Your Honor is well aware under Commonwealth versus Vasquez at 481 Mass 750, Supreme Judicial Court indicated that this court, or the court, has vested in sound discretion of the bail judge. And the main considerations would be obviously the usual bail considerations: nature and circumstance of the offense, likelihood of success on the defense, roots in the community, and of course, as in Vasquez case, as well as Commonwealth versus Herring, 489 Mass 569, defendant's risk of flight. So now you have a situation, Your Honor, where this woman has incredible support, as you saw, letters from Foxborough that were signed by about 15 women, letters from her family, friends, letters from people she's known since the 6th grade that have stayed in touch with her. One thing that's a theme that is readily apparent is that Lindsay loved her children, that she would always, one of the letters said, she would always rub her belly, rub her belly. She had pictures of her pregnant, standing next to Patrick, hanging on the wall. I was in the house. The house is absolutely loaded with indicia of love for those kids. Photographs on the wall, little drawings, all sorts of games, toys, playpens, bassinets in the living room, in the dining room, the kitchen loaded with toys. Virtually the entire house, including their master bedroom. Toys, things for the kids. This is not a situation, Your Honor, that was planned by any means. This is a situation that clearly was a product of mental illness. Now, under the Vasquez case, one of the issues, as I said, is whether or not there's a risk of flight. Now, I did submit to Your Honor.
Going to hit the pause button there, remove that from the screen as we're talking about this. So a lot of you also talking about the husband in the chat. I've noticed that. It's something I talk with my guest about tonight as well. So we talk about the case. I interview Dr. Yalda Safai, who is a forensic psychiatrist. You may have seen her on a lot of the programs. She's very famous, and she really dives into whether or not medication did play a role, whether or not what this defense looks like, how it needs to be achieved by the defense, and how common it is or isn't. A lot of these questions are answered in our interview together tonight, and that's going to be in the video section. If you're watching this later, you'll be able to find it there on my channel. So the husband, here he is, Patrick Clancy, has publicly supported the defense and says that he also filed medical negligence lawsuits against her healthcare providers, alleging failures in diagnoses and treatment. He says that he's forgiven her, and he says that this is not indicative of the person that she is. He paints a very different picture. He's on the witness list for both the state, the Commonwealth there in Massachusetts, and for the defense. Well, I mentioned this again tonight. I believe that he could be the defense star witness. It's going to come down to a battle of the experts in this trial. And then you could see him on the stand really painting a picture of the missed warning signs. And we talk about that. So he's going to be also a character witness for her, which is going to be very important. And then it'll be interesting to see if Lindsay Clancy herself takes the stand. Now, how much that would benefit her, I don't think it would legally, but in eyes of the jury, just painting her as a grieving mother after realizing what had happened, it may help her in that regard. Let me know what you think in the chat. I am going to leave you with this, just a few more pictures of these kids, because really it's about them and their little lives that were cut way too short. I want to thank you guys for being here and all your support for the channel. We're at 54,000 subscribers as of today. So 55,000 is right around the corner, and maybe more as we bring the true crime family back together, and you guys are a part of that. So thank you for also getting in the chat on my posts, letting me know what stories you like to have covered and what experts you want to hear from and what sort of angles, and I can help dive into those. But thank you for the support of the show, because it allows me time and resources to do so. I hope that you guys have a great night. I'm going to post a new episode tonight. That's going to be with my expert, and that's going to be probably at 7:15 Eastern time. So I hope you check it out. I hope you like it. I hope you hype the episode. Subscribe if you haven't already. Welcome to the channel, and please share it. But again, thank you for being here, and take care of yourself. Okay, everyone?